Hello, and welcome to the Reclaim Your Divinity series with your host, Amanda Cannon. Thank you so much for joining me in today's episode. I am a spiritual priestess who guides women to reclaim their power. I guide you to transcend your limitations, clear your past, and align you with your inner truth so that you can rewrite and reignite your soul's essence to create life on your terms. And I'm so excited in today's episode as we dive in deep with Tina Regecova. Tina is a quantum healing coach who has a whole list of modalities under her belt and who has created her own way of guiding people to their inner transformation using all different tools that she has acquired to help you to create your own toolbox and move through your transformation on your own. So you don't always need to go and see somebody. So Tina has been exploring the wonders of natural health, healing, and well-being for many years. And she has led this journey of self-discovery, has led her down an amazing and joyful path where she can now find love and forgiveness within herself. It has helped her find her passion and her purpose, and one that she now shares with people in her life through her one-on-one mentoring and coaching. And Tina says, if you don't believe in miracles, perhaps you have forgotten that you are one. And so in today's episode, we dive deep with Tina into both the quantum and the scientifics around emotions, how they are stored within our body, how they dictate the stories that we create about different events in our life, how we can go on to create new stories, tools that you can use to help you to identify what's going on in the present moment so that you can reframe that, and how the energy of these thoughts actually creates our external reality and our manifestations that are coming in. And so stick around if you're interested in learning how you can retrain your brain, your nervous system, and your thoughts to a new state of being, how you can be okay with being okay and not being okay, and how you can create your reality. And all of the links to both myself and Tina can be found in the description box of the show below. Hi, Tina. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Reclaim Your Divinity podcast. I'm so excited to have you and dive in deep with you on all things quantum, science, metaphysical, and all the beautiful things that wisdom that you have to bring to this earth today on this podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for having me. I really appreciate the time that you put into this podcast and also for you to invite me and being part of it. It's really a blessing. So thank you so much.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. So Tina, before we dive into everything, you have a whole range of holistic or modalities under your belt, a whole lot of teachings. You've gone on a big journey to a big self-discovery journey and learning all these different amazing things. Can you please just share with the audience what led you to go on this journey?
From a very early age, I've always had a very curious mind about, I guess, the spiritual and what's outside of us, but not really pursued it just growing up. And some years ago, my mum passed away, and I was blessed enough to be able to spend the last few hours with her. So even though she was in a coma, I got to be there and hold her hand and see her passing and hold that space for her. And it's very profound when you watch someone take their last breath. And even though I believe it doesn't mean that the spirit is not here. It's just the body that's going back to Mother Earth. It still has a huge effect on you. So I watched my mum take the last breath in, just like I watched my son take his first breath. It really made me question what is between the two of them and what is there more than what I'm currently experiencing. Because I found myself very much caught up on the hamster wheel and just chasing, living in the past, living in the future, not experiencing the present moment. And it made me stop and just get really curious about what more is out there. I guess the question, why are we here? How can we explore the different opportunities that life presents to us? So I started looking into both the spiritual side, but also from having a very logical and analytical mind, I also wanted that to be satisfied. So I also started to explore more the scientific side that could explain some of the ways that we respond to different things that's happening in our lives. And I've done a lot of different workshops. I've listened to a lot of different speakers. I've read a lot of different books, and I found that what they all have in common is that we're looking for a happiness. And what they also have in common is that that happiness that we're looking for outside of us is already within us. So from attending different workshops and seminars and also seeing a lot of people go back over and over and over and over again, keep seeking outside themselves, I got very curious about why it is so difficult for us to go within, to find that happiness within or reclaim our own power, why it is that we constantly seek outside ourselves to be validated, to be feeling worthy, to feel happy.
Yeah.
But not just spiritually, because what I found as well is that we have people who are very different stages of their lives. There's some people you can talk to very easily about chakras, meditation, about yoga, and other people you need to talk more in regards to what's happening with the different brain waves when you do meditation, what's happening in the body when you're reacting to a situation with the emotions that you feel and your perception, so that you can meet people where they're at, not where you are at.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Tina, and that beautiful story about linking our first breath with our last breath. And there's got to be so much more, because I feel that so many people out there can relate to that. Like there has got to be more, and getting off that hamster wheel and coming back to the self to find happiness within. So beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing. And just, you mentioned about exploring the science behind it, because, all of the meditations and the metaphysical practices that a lot of spiritual people talk about, there is so much scientific research out there these days to back it for those people who are interested in understanding the logics behind it all. So, can you please share a little bit about your findings with that?
One of the things that I found is very, very interesting is if you look at the human brain and the brain waves that we operate in, from pretty much when we're born up till, I guess, early teenage years, we operate in what's called alpha brain waves. They're the same brain waves as just before you fall asleep or just before you wake up. And it's also the same brain waves that most people experience when they do meditation. It's like the inspirational and an aspirational mind. It's the artistic mind. It's also where we learn very quickly, but we don't necessarily have the concept of time and space and human experience. That starts to develop more throughout the teenage years when we move into beta brain waves, which is a bit higher. It helps us understand time and space, and helps us navigate. I need to go there and to be there at a set time. So I need to leave at this time. And that beta brainwave is also paired with the fearful mind. The
Yeah.
fearful mind happens in beta brainwaves as well. So you find a lot today when people, they are caught on the hamster wheel, or they're very busy with being busy, and they get really, really stressed. That stress, anger, frustration, fear are all high beta brainwaves. And we know what's happening to the body when you're in fight or flight moment. Your immune system is deprived, your digestive system is deprived. There's so many things that shutting down in your body, which could potentially lead to disease. So when you understand that you're operating in beta brainwaves, low beta brainwaves when you're reading a book, having a nice conversation, a bit higher when you're driving in traffic, but when you start getting really, really stressed or angry or frustrated, you go into higher brainwaves, beta brainwaves, and you start going into the fight and flight mode. When you start understanding that's what's going on, I believe it makes more sense to start looking into how can I lower those brainwaves? How can I get into a state of my mind where I'm not hurting my physical body? And one of the tools you can use for that is meditation.
Yeah.
So I found the link between those very, very interesting, because once you have the awareness of it and the knowledge of it, it gives you the possibility of changing.
Yeah.
And some people might say, well, how do I change? Because when I feel really angry or really frustrated, I can't really think of anything else, which is very, very normal, because in high beta brainwave, you can't really absorb any information that's not relevant to how you're feeling. There are tools out there that potentially can help you from even get into those really strong emotions to start with. And again, I looked at the scientific side of it. I got very curious about what's the difference between emotions and feelings, and also finding that a lot of people, we're telling ourselves stories based on our feelings. Those stories might, it's just how you perceive it. It might be right, it might be wrong, but it's not just the story. It's your perception of a particular situation. So if you feel very, very strongly about something, it's because you have a story attached to it that makes you feel that way. And I like to use the example of, if you're watching any kind of sports game and there's two opposing teams, and one team walks away as winner and the other team walks away not winning. And the supporters of each team would have very different feelings about the game. However, the game has not changed. The game is the same. It's your perception of that game that has determined how you feel about it.
Yeah. Beautiful analogy there. And thank you so much for explaining about how our body is responding to the different brainwaves that we are experiencing. I think something that would be really relevant to share is for people who are just coming onto this journey and starting to learn how to become aware, because that's what it all starts with, the awareness of how we are feeling. How do they know when their brain waves are escalating and they're about to potentially go into that high stress kind of feeling in their body? And is there something that they can do to implement to prevent that from happening, to prevent it from escalating?
I feel that one of the most important parts of it is to allow yourself to be okay, to be curious about, what are my triggers?
Mm.
Because we all have triggers that, when that happens, it can be when you drive in traffic and someone cuts in front of you. And when you have an experience where you feel really frustrated or you feel really angry, when you come out of it, go, well, what was the actual trigger? What was the feeling, or what was the story I was telling myself that caused me to react that way?
Mm.
Because the feelings are based on your emotions. But what I found is interesting is the emotions is just a chemical that's released in your brain on your perception of the situation. And it takes about 90 seconds for it to go through your body. So if you do not match it up with any other emotions to create stories and feelings, it's gone.
Mm.
So when you become aware of the stories that you're telling yourself that makes you feel that way, it enables you to change the story you're telling and to change the way that you feel about it. So, and it is very simple, but it's not easy. And a lot of times you do need a teacher with you to help guide you and hold that space, to help you find what are the triggers, because sometimes the triggers can be very deep in the subconscious, and that's where meditation can be a really, really powerful tool. Because when you are meditating and you get yourself into those alpha brain waves and that deep, relaxed state, you're actually connecting to your subconscious mind, and you're enabling yourself to find and identify some of the things that are the triggers for you that might have come throughout childhood. As a child, when we grow up, we don't understand a situation because we don't have the higher brainwaves. We make up stories to help us understand how we feel about it. If we can help ourselves change that story and feel about it differently, it also can enable us to react differently in any other situations that comes into our lives.
Yeah, beautiful. So what you're saying is, if I understand correctly, when you're being triggered, like past the event, you've moved through it, if you can then get curious as to understand what was that triggering, what was the first time in my life that I felt angered or raged by that, and sort of get curious to understand, so you can identify what it is about that certain situation that is triggering you so deeply. So that way, as you start to become aware of those stories, the next time it happens, in that 90-second period before you start to flip the lid or lose consciousness, so to speak, you can be like, okay, this is happening. Remember, this story isn't true and this story is true. And you can sort of coach yourself out of the reaction or that escalation by telling yourself the true story. Is that right?
In simple terms, that is right. Sometimes it might be a bit difficult when you
Yeah.
start actually getting yourself into that whole state of mind, because you can't just jump out of it. If you could, people would.
Yeah.
So I feel sometimes it's about making the decisions. I want to make a change and I'm going to be okay with it. Maybe take some time. And there's going to be times where I'm just really angry, I'm really frustrated, I'm really stressed, and that's okay. Recognizing that that's when you're working in your mind or in the ego,
Mm.
and embrace the ego and go like, okay, well, ego, now you're taking over again. Invite it into your life, but also go, okay, now you've been driving the bus for a while. Let me take over and drive the bus and let you enjoy this ride. But making the decision to wanting to make a change, and more importantly, taking the responsibility that the change starts with you.
Yeah.
I remember reading a book by Dr. Hawkins called Letting Go. And it starts out about people going to do yoga, they're going to meditate monks in Tibet, they're going to do workshops in South America with shamans there. They're doing all these things outside themselves to find that happiness within themselves. And as long as we seek that outside ourselves and don't take the responsibility for our own happiness, we also give the power away for our own happiness. So once you make the decision, and that's the hardest part, I want to find that happiness within myself, because you're going to be thrown obstacles in your way. That's going to be by other people who want to stop you. That's going to be by your logical mind that wants to stop you. But once you make that decision to go within, it comes with great responsibility as well, because when you realize that you're responsible for your own happiness, it also means you're responsible for your own non-happiness.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things that I found was very curious again, and that has been really interesting to me, because so many people today live very much in their mind, not so much from their heart. because of how we're brought up, because of all the stress, because of all the inputs. And that's why I've been so looking into the scientific part of it, because when my logical mind is satisfied, I don't really question the spiritual side. If I do that and I get that result, I'm happy. I don't need, I know that's not how it works for me. And I know it's been tested and all of that. So when I talk about emotions and feelings and perceptions and stories we tell about ourselves, one of the things that I come across, and it's a little cartoon that really blew my mind, and it's called the double slit experiment. And the double slit experiment shows how we turn pretty much wave or energy into solid matter. So in very short terms, scientists, they were doing experiments to see how electrons they would act. So if you imagine you have a ball with one slit through it, and you have a tennis ball with paint on it, and you fire it through, you will expect to have just one line of paint on the wall behind it. And then if you make two slits in the wall, you have two lines of paint on the wall behind it, because the tennis ball is solid matter. So the scientists took the electron from the atom, and now we made of atoms. Atoms are the nucleus, the electrons, and the protons. So they took the electron from the atom, and they wanted to do this experiment. So they had the one slip, and they sent it through, and they got like a nice pattern from it. And then they did two slips, expecting that they were going to get two patterns on the back wall. But what they found was that instead of having the solid matter, the two pattern, they got what was called an interference pattern. And an interference pattern is like if you have two little rocks and you drop them into a puddle of water, and they create waves, and where the waves, they kind of interfere with each other. So there was like a lot of little lines, and they were very curious. All of a sudden, what this is solid matter has turned into a wave matter in the way that it reacts. So they got curious, and they thought, we'll put a camera in there to see what slits we're going through, what is actually happening. And once they put the camera in to see and observe what the electron was doing to create this interference pattern, it went back to create two slits. So to me, what that showed is that the electrons in us are very much aware of being observed, or where we place awareness, or where we give our intention or our energy. Where we do that, we change what is a wave pattern, an energy matter, and we turn it into a solid matter or an experience. And that's the experience we bring into our lives. So if we are caught up in our own mind, thinking, I'm not good enough for that, or I need this, or I can't do that, because that's where we place the awareness, because that's where we give our intention and our energy, the possibilities that is within the energy field is then turned into the solid matter that you bring into yourself as an experience in your life. And when you realize that, and then realize that your feelings is based on your emotions, that coupled together, that's based on your perception of the situation. If you can change that perception of the situation and look at it differently, then you look at everything else out there differently, and the life experience you bring into yourself is different.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Tina. Is there any chance that you could share the link to that experiment that you're talking about? And we can put it in the description of the show for people to go and check out if they want to.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's several different links that you can have a look at, but I'll share the one that I saw that I found was just amazing. It's very short and it's very informative, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. So you're talking about how our focus and our attention on with our thoughts can literally bring physical experiences into our lives. And if we just shift our perception of, it could be when we're talking about manifesting, most people are trying to manifest things like relationships, health, money, those sorts of things. Now, there are a lot of manifestation teachers out there who teach us that all we need to do is pretend that we already have it, feel as if we already have it, and focus on the good and focusing on it, on us actually bringing that in. And you're also talking about the stories that we hold and often that we carry with us from childhood, and that actually impacts our perception. So even if we are practicing feeling like we have a loving relationship in our life, what would that feel like to go to bed and have somebody to cuddle you and hold you to sleep, to share dinner with and walks on the beach with, and you're practicing that feeling and everything. But deep down, you're holding on to a belief that true love like that isn't available to you because there was some kind of circumstance in your childhood that led you to create that story about yourself. What are your thoughts on that? Like, does the subconscious belief overrule the pretending that you have it and creating the feeling?
I believe it does. Part of that based again on the science showing that whatever you think through your brain and the energy field that comes from that is not even close as powerful as what comes from your heart.
Mm.
So if you are trying to meditate and go like, I want $1 million, I want $1 million, I want $1 million, but you don't feel worthy of that $1 million, the feeling that comes from your heart space is stronger than the thought that comes from your mind. And you might say, well, how can I change that? How can I change that I can get? It might not be that you get the $1 million. What I believe is one of the first steps you need to take is to get from living in your mind or in your head to get to live in your heart. So when you're in your head, it's when you're navigating traffic and you need to be aware, but when you're living through everyday life, it comes from the place of your heart. And bringing that head and heart coherence back into your heart. Because it's not $1 million necessarily that you want. You want what it gives you.
Mm.
You want the happiness or the freedom or the security that it gives you. And if you can help find that within yourself without having that perfect relationship, without having the $1 million, without having that job, you can find that within yourself, then you don't need the rest. The rest will happen around you to serve you with where you're at.
Mm.
And that again comes back to thinking within yourself. When you go, I want $1 million, what do you want $1 million for? To fix up everything that's not happy in your life? That's external again. It's not $1 million you want. It's happiness. It's feeling that stillness and peace within yourself that whatever happens, I am enough.
Yeah.
And I'm okay. And even when I'm not okay, I'm still okay.
Yeah. That's amazing. And that's, something that I've always sort of expressed in my belief is that the manifestation journey is actually a self-healing journey. And I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily like to hear that. There are a lot of people that do and are okay with hearing that. But yes, I yeah, absolutely resonate with everything that you're saying there. And just to give some clarity around living from the heart and out of the head, for most of us who have been living from our head for 20, 30, 40, 50 years plus, how, obviously meditation helps to drop out of the head and into the body. But as we move through everyday life, as we are cooking the meal or going out to lunch with friends or going to the post office to pay bills, or, just all those sorts of different things that we do, how do we learn to live from the heart in our everyday life?
Well, I've watched Greg Braden do a very, very short teaching of how to create the head and heart coherence that I really, really love because it's very simple and it's very short. And it's something that you can do pretty much any time during the day where you might feel that you get caught up again in your head and I've got to go there, I've got to have to, and it just brings you back into the present moment, which is what this is about. Not I have to or I should have done.
Mm.
And the way that I love the way he presents, he studied for 30 years how to marry together the science with the more traditional beliefs and the spiritual healings. And he's one of my great teachers that I've been following. And he talks about uh, when you place your hand on your heart, that
Mm.
helps you subconsciously bring the awareness into your heart space. Then when you take a deep breath in, and then you breathe out a little bit deeper. This is something you can use if you start feeling a bit scared or angry or frustrated, because breathing in deep but breathing out deeper gives the body a sense of feeling safe.
Mm.
So you do that a few times and you get yourself into a space of where you're feeling safe. You're placing the awareness on your heart. And then you think about something that makes you joyful, something that makes you grateful, gratitude, happy, and you just hold on to that thought and you allow for that thought to feel your heart space and you just breathe it in and breathe it out. And you just hold that space 3, 4, 5 minutes. Just allow yourself just to be there and just feel that.
Mm.
And when you let go, when you come back into the more present moment and let go of holding your heart space, you can feel you're coming more from your heart because you brought the awareness into your heart. So that's a very, very simple tool. There's a lot of other tools. A lot of people use different tools, and that's one of the things that I really like to explore are all the different tools that are available because different people resonate with different things that works for them. But I have found this one to just be so beautiful and so simple that you do. One of the things as well that I remember coming across is when you are doing this, you don't necessarily want to feel into love because for some people love hurt.
Yeah.
That's why the choice of words like joy, happiness, gratitude, gratefulness for me works so much stronger.
Mm. Yeah, and something that is true for you, not something that society says should bring you joy, gratitude, whatever. Like it could just be anything as long as it's true for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And so, just cycling back to something that you said earlier. So, from my understanding, what we're doing here is when we're bringing the awareness to the heart and we are cultivating that emotion of joy, gratitude, or something like that, that we are activating the frequency or the waves of our heart, because as science has proven, now we have a brain in our heart, and we're activating that frequency in our field rather than the frequency of all of the thoughts that are going on in our mind. And so that is the shift that is occurring by doing that. So suddenly your field becomes more magnetic to the frequency of your heart as opposed to the frequency of your head. And you feel better and lighter in doing that. Is that right?
Yeah, I love how you just summed that up perfectly. Yeah.
Amazing. And it's such a short process that if you're at work and something's happening and you're getting stressed out, you could just go to the bathroom and sit on the toilet and do it. Or, if you're at home with the kids, you go lock yourself in the bathroom for a minute and do it. Something that you can do almost anywhere, really, isn't it?
It is absolutely, and it's one of many tools. There would be other people who resonate with doing tapping. There's different kind of tapping
Yeah.
that people they prefer to do, or energy clearing, or some people might want to burn some sage, or
Mm.
there's so many different ways. And I feel it's so important that we can all be okay with what resonates with us. What works for you might not work for me. It doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. And there are days where just days works for me, and other days where the meditation works for me. depending on where I'm at and what's going on in my life, by expanding the options and the tools available to you and being aware of it. And I really feel that the awareness is a huge part of it, because when we get ourselves caught on the hamster wheel, when we get stuck in our mind, we lose our awareness to some extent of what's happening around us. I believe most of us would have experienced driving home, and when we get home, we go, I don't even remember the last 20 minutes of this drive,
Mm.
because we were somewhere else. We were, this is what I'm going to do for shopping. This is what's going on for work. This is what my girlfriend said I don't like. This is what there's so
Mm.
many things going on in our minds. So we can start bringing more awareness into the present moment. That's
Mm.
such a huge start. And then when we get lost again in the past and in the future, and then go like, oh, I got lost again. That was my monkey brain talking. Hello, monkey brain. I love you. Can we just get back into the present moment? Can you just sit on my shoulder and enjoy this ride? And
Mm.
then, you might 5 minutes later be thinking ahead again, and then oh, now I'm doing it again. Interesting. Why
Mm.
am I doing that? And be curious about it. Don't judge or blame yourself for doing it. Just be really curious and be okay with that. Sometimes the monkey brain just want to drive that bus, and you just really need to kick it off and go like you sit in the passenger seat now, and I'm the driver.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that I love to do as well to bring me back to the present moment, when I'm really in that struggling state, is to just really focus on the little tiny elements of what's happening around me. So if I'm opening the fridge, the sound of the fridge door opening, the feeling of my hand on the bottle of water that I'm taking out of the fridge, the sound of my footsteps as I'm walking, and the sound of the glass hitting the table, just all of those little things. Like I know when I first started this mindfulness journey, that was really helpful to bring me to the present moment and to train my brain into the present moment, because I could only do it for so long, focus on it for so long, and then I'd be back in lost thoughts, spiraling thoughts, and then okay, come back. What am I doing? I'm having a cold sip of water. What does that water feel like going down and into my tummy? So I've always found that to be a really helpful tool to when I'm wanting to not allow the thoughts to be all consuming. And then, you know, when I have time for processing and stuff like that, then I can go and sit down and do the processing. Um, so I just thought I would share that because it's such a simple and easy tool to use as well.
To me, that sounds very much like mindfulness,
Yeah.
which is another thing that we can practice. And we can practice when we have the time for it. So if you are the one that makes meals in the house, be mindful of how, wow, this smells nice.
Mm.
It looks nice, how it feels. Or when you're eating, this taste, this sensation, this smell, mindfulness can very much bring us into the present moment, because we're there to pay attention to the senses that's being stimulated at that particular time. So when you say you drink a glass of water and how it makes you feel, so you're kind of tasting the water and you're following it as you swallow the water and how it travels through your body. So you're mindful of it. And mindfulness can come, like you said, by listening to what's going on around you, by feeling the earth as you walk, or when you're sitting, just the support of the seat, or the temperature in the air around you, whatever sounds you can hear. And that's something that we can very easily practice as well. But especially, I believe, when we are in a situation where we are more relaxed. So if we like to, again, I love cooking. So I use that as an example. And I look at the different colors and the different textures and the crunchiness and the softness. And for me, that's mindfulness. It's not just a matter of getting a chopping board and a knife and some stuff on it and chop it up and chuck it in a pot.
Mm.
For other people, the mindfulness might be going for a really nice walk.
Mm.
We all have different, uh, what really makes us get into that state where we just feel and experience it all.
Mm.
but to bring that into our everyday life as well as a mindfulness, that's a beautiful tool. So yeah, I think that's amazing for you to share that. Absolutely.
Yeah, just helping you drop out of the head and into the body and into the present moment. I love how you talk about the cooking as well. I love cooking as well and doing that. So Tina, you work with clients, meeting them where they are at. So like you've mentioned, you've only shared a couple of your tools and tips and techniques. However, you like to identify where clients are at in their journey and what they need from you in that moment, and you're able to assist them with what they need and to help them on their journey to activate this heart brain coherence and identify the stories so that they can begin to have a different perception of the world around them. Is that right?
That is what I like to do, and I very much believe and like to be able to give people the tools so that they don't need to come back and see me for the next 10 years.
Mm,
And that's not because I don't want to see people. I love people, but I do feel it's very important that you can empower someone to
yeah.
find that within themselves so that they don't need to seek externally anymore.
Mm,
Sometimes might seek advice or help or what another tool I can use for this particular situation, or I'm a little bit out of sorts, but not that you have to have ongoing consultation or coaching or therapy or anything like that. I feel that if you can empower someone with their own toolbox so that they know what to use, but also know that life is like a roller coaster.
mm,
And sometimes we're meant to struggle because there are lessons in there. If everything was just, oh, la, 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 and nice and happy, and we get to the end of life, we might go, well, what did I actually experience?
mm,
Our senses are here to keep us alive, but our emotions are here to make it real.
mm,
And then here that we can experience this thing called life and we can experience the feelings. And sometimes they can be really intense and really strong, and we can be like, oh, can we just move on to another chapter? But be okay, because when we are in those lower kind of feelings, vibrating emotions, it also means that when we come out of them, we take a lesson from it.
yeah. Mhm,
And when we can recognize the lesson, well, what did I learn? I don't have to necessarily like it, I have to go through it or agree with that I had to go through it, but what has that given me that I can share with the rest of the world? Or I
mm,
can share with myself or with my friends or with my family that has been a positive or a better outcome from that experience. We're not never going to go through life all just being bliss and happiness. We're
mm,
going to have ups and downs, but to be okay with sometimes going through difficult times. And for me, this year has been very educational, I will say. It's been some very interesting times, and there's been some very personal losses, and there's been a lot of joy, and
mm,
it's been a lot of teaching for me. And I feel from having the awareness that that's a part of the journey and allowing myself to experiencing it without holding on to it and creating these big, strong stories I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life, but
yeah.
just live through it, learn from it, and then let it go. Has been a blessing.
Mm, absolutely. And I feel like self-reflection can come in handy here. Like, as you're talking about that, I'm just realizing how I have come to move through those challenging times more easily, knowing, trusting that it's happening for me in some way or another. There is something here for me to, even if I don't understand it at this moment, there will be clarity in the future as to what's going on here. And I have been able to gain that trust via reflecting on the past and how those situations and the lessons that I've learned. And, it's sort of like as something, it might not be easy to just sit with the discomfort and the pain initially, and it probably never is exactly easy to sit with it, but you can develop this trust of, or this okay with not being okay, like you say, just knowing that, that saying rejection is for your protection, or sometimes there is loss that we experience in life, and that is just a part of life. But just moving through it and knowing that it's not going to last, there will be a lesson, there will be something that I gain from this perceived negative experience that I'm sitting in right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't believe it's necessarily meant to be easy. It might be very simple, but not easy. One of the other tools it's one of my go-to tools, and sometimes I forget it because it's
Mm.
like that with everything, but is when I'm going through, either with myself or anyone else in my life, some form of challenge or frustration or grief or anything like that, I ask myself this question: how will love respond?
Mm.
How will love respond to this? If I take away the stories, if I take away the labels, if I take away everything else, how will love respond? And if it doesn't work, double the dose.
I love that.
Because when you come from a place of love, when you come from a place of your heart,
Mm.
I feel you're going to be okay even when you're not okay. How would love respond? Double the dose. Because really, that's what there is. When it comes to it, in the end of the day, that's what it is for us to be here and experience this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so very much, Tina, with sharing all of your beautiful wisdom with us today about how we can understand how we literally can change our life by changing our emotions and our feelings and getting into heart brain coherence and identifying the stories that we're holding on to so that we can rewrite them in a sense, really. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And if anyone is wishing to reach out to you for guidance or support, is that something that they're able to do? And how can they find you?
I do have limited spaces available to coach and guide people. And they would be able to private message me on my Facebook page. So if you like to put a link
Yeah, of course.
in this, yeah, that would be the best way really to contact me in regards to that.
Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tina. And just before we go, if you could just give one piece of advice that the listeners need to receive from Tina, that they can't stop listening to this podcast without receiving this piece of advice from you, what would it be?
That the happiness you seek is already within you.
Yeah, beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Amanda. Truly appreciate your time.